grateful that I don't have any names that I need to add to the list of our fallen warriors. Because that's traumatic. It's traumatic for their families. It's traumatic for any American of good conscience. So I'm just grateful when I don't have a name to put on that list. And I did have an interesting a piece of information that was sent to me by one of the branches of the military, and hopefully I can find it right now. I don't always come up with things in the right time. Oh, here we go. Came from the Navy office, and it says that Chief Constructionman Andrew McCauley of Wellington, Florida, a military enlisted processing classifier who's assigned to the Navy Talent Acquisition Group out of San Antonio, was promoted to the rank of Senior Chief Petty Officer by Commander Stephanie Simoni, Acting Commanding Officer. The Navy Talent Acquisition Group, the NTAG, in San Antonio at the Warrior and Family Support Center. He's a 2004 graduate of Wellington High School, had his insignia pinned on by his children, and he joined America's Navy in 2004, becoming a recruiter in 2014. The area of responsibility includes 2 talent acquisition onboarding centers, which manage more than 34 Navy recruiting stations and Navy officer recruiting stations spread throughout 144,000 square miles of Central and South Texas territory. So that's one of our own who has been elevated as a result of their diligence, their hard work. And I'm just always, I'd much rather tell you that story today than have to talk about the pain that a family somewhere would be feeling due to the passing of a member of our military forces, no matter how that happens. So there you have it. I feel pretty comfortable today knowing that, in fact, we have not had any fatalities right now. Now, of course, I'm very disturbed by what I saw yesterday when the Secretary of Defense, as a matter of fact, I ended up ranting about it on a podcast that should drop sometime this afternoon. But I'm watching last night as the Secretary of Defense is greeting some people. It looks like some people who work within the Pentagon, and then maybe some visitors. And not only is he masked, but he has on like this full-out face shield. He doesn't shake anyone's hand. He does the fist bump thing. And he's a big, lumbering giant of a man. And he is so nervous. He looks so frightened that I thought, oh, my God, I hope that they're not watching this segment in China or in Russia, because if this is what's leading our armed forces right now, we might be in bigger trouble than even I expected. This is just obscene to me. This week I got to see 2 congressmen weeping, just listening to a recounting of what happened on January 6th. And listen to police officers referring to it as, Fallujah-like. And I'm thinking, what happened to the men? Where are the boys? There was a movie in South Florida years ago called Where the Boys Are. And that's my question. Where are the boys? Where are the guys that are supposed to be leading this mighty great nation, this mighty great police force, this mighty great military? They're behind masks and shields and fist bumping. I mean, what's next? This is so dangerous that he has to wear a face shield. Does this man spend any time in combat? Does he expect men to follow him when he behaves that way? Because I would have a very tough time following someone that looks frightened of a virus, which, by the way, in spite of the fact that you're now being told to batten down the hatches and, put your masks on and send your kids to school with masks and social distance and all the rest of this nonsense that you're currently being told, this virus, whether it's highly transmittable or not, and apparently it is more transmittable than the original, it's not killing people. Very few people are actually succumbing to this Delta variant. Now, maybe more people are getting sick than have been in a couple of months, but I pointed out the other day that we saw a reduction in the people diagnosed with flus, and I believe that's because we were calling flus, we're testing out on some of these really inferior testing access modules or whatever they're called. They were giving them false positives when the people had the flu. So I don't trust any of their numbers. They don't even provide numbers half the time. They just say, well, we've decided science is leading us to do this. And then you go, well, could you cite some studies? And they start citing studies that are incomplete in this country or that were completed in India. And I'm sitting here going, what? You're gonna talk about shutting down this country again? You're going to put our 5-year-olds behind masks? Now my granddaughter, who actually goes to school in the Los Angeles Unified School District, they have announced that not only are these 5-year-olds and 8-year-olds and 12-year-olds going to have to wear a mask every day to school, it's worse, right? It gets worse. They're going to have to be tested every week for COVID. What? This is government run thoroughly amok, okay? If you're an illegal immigrant and you cross the border and you're COVID positive, they'll release you into the interior. But my 5-year-old granddaughter, who has absolutely the smallest possibility of getting very sick, even if she were to come in contact with the COVID virus, she's got to wear a mask? Where are the masks for the illegal immigrants that are streaming over my border that are testing positive? You know, are they being monitored? Are they being, quarantined? Because if they tell them they're quarantined, does anybody really believe they're going to be quarantined? No. They give them plane tickets. They give them bus tickets. It's crazy land. We're living in crazy times. That's all I can say. And I've just about had it. I don't know how fed up you are, but I'm so fed up that I'm literally throwing all my masks away because I don't even want to be tempted to put on a mask. Forget it. I'll take my chances. I've been double vaccinated. Now they're talking about a booster shot, that I need a third vaccination. Whoa. Obviously, you didn't understand this virus when you told me that 2 shots was enough. Now you're telling me you need a booster shot? No. I'm not believing a word that they say anymore. I'm sorry. I'm following the science, and the science is showing me that even though we may have infections up, we have hospitalizations that are stabilizing and very few fatalities from this Delta variant. Dun, 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 dun. Although the Secretary of Defense feels he must triple mask. I'm not doing it. I'm not masking. I'm not double masking. I'm just not doing it. And, I went to the gym this morning. A couple of people were wearing masks. I bid them a fond adieu. I'm not putting on a mask. All right. Let me take a break because I'll be coming back with the Executive Director of the Center for Immigration Studies, Mark Krikorian, to talk about some immigration issues that really, really are troubling. Stay right where you are. All right, welcome back. As promised, I have Mark Krikorian, who is, of course, an expert on immigration issues. He's the Executive Director of the Center for Immigration Studies, and he's been there as long as I can remember. And Mark, I listen regularly to Parsing Immigration Policy, your podcast. It's awesome.
Well, thank you. We just started a couple months ago, and we've gotten some good feedback. I'm glad. You never know whether, and I assume you have something similar with you on the radio, you never know whether there's really anybody at the other end listening to you talk, or are you just talking into a box and
right.
It's disappearing into the ether. So I'm glad people are listening. It's Parsing Immigration Policy. It's in all the usual places for podcasts, but you can also just get it at our homepage at cis.org.
Yeah, I got it on my Apple Podcasts. I locked it in so that I get notified. And this last one that I listened to about the UN refugee program, it made me sick to my stomach, to be perfectly honest. I mean, why are we in that so-called treaty?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. This week was the 70th anniversary of what's called the United Nations Convention relating to the status of refugees. It's a treaty. I don't know why they call it convention, but it's a treaty. We didn't sign it, though. In 1951, Harry Truman was president at the time, said, the Democrat, said, no, this is, restricts American sovereignty. We're not signing this. But in 1968, they put out another treaty, basically just a sequel, that applied those rules from 1951, which only applied to Europe, just applied it to the whole world. So it's basically the same thing. And and LBJ, President Johnson, signed it, Senate approved it, and now it's the law of the land. Mm-hmm. And the real problem in controlling immigration because of that treaty is that, which has been put into U.S. law, the terms of the treaty, is in asylum.
Right.
Because refugee resettlement, like where we resettle people from wherever it is, Iraq or Afghanistan or Burma or something, whatever you think about that, it's something we have total control over. We pick out who we're going to have here and vet them and all that, and then we bring them here. Asylum is kind of it's sort of the other side of the coin. It's for people who are supposedly persecuted,
right,
but those who get here without our consent. They sneak in for the most part, or maybe you saw this in Florida a lot. They come on a raft, or they come in legally on some kind of visa and then overstay and say that we can't let them go. We can't make them go back because they're persecuted. And the UN treaty says we have to address it, in a certain way and define persecution in a certain way. That is a significant limitation on our sovereignty. Doesn't mean we wouldn't have an asylum system. It's just that we should be deciding how we run asylum, who it applies to, what the categories are, and not some UN treaty. And that's why I wrote a piece this week arguing that we need to get out of the treaty. And like any treaty, you can get out of it. You just have to give notice, 1 year notice, and then you're out of it. And then doesn't fix everything, but then we'll be free to set up an asylum system based on Americans' national interest, not on some airy-fairy human rights law that nobody else in the world bothers to follow.
Right.
But, we do. I mean, China signed the refugee treaty. That tells you how essentially meaningless it really is.
Right. And I guess what really disturbs me is that we're so busy focused on what's happening at the southern border, which is a substantial problem, that all these other immigration issues like asylum, nobody talks about. It's as though we didn't have these problems, and they end up impacting the immigration system in its totality, and nobody knows anything. Let me tell you for sure, people listening to the show right now had no idea this was in existence.
Oh no, I'm sure, and I would, Joyce, though, I would not say that they're two separate things, because what we're seeing at the border is the way it is because of this refugee treaty that we are part of. In other words, the people coming across the border, the ones who are just regular illegal aliens, single men looking to go to a landscaping job in Chicago or something, that is something we're going to have to deal with, and whether we like it or not. But
right.
The reason we have such a crisis on the southern border is all of these people, especially adults bringing kids with them, who claim asylum. In other words, they're using this treaty and its consequences that we've signed as a kind of tool against us. And it's not really the illegal aliens who are the problem here, because they're just taking advantage of something we've done.
Right.
It's the anti-borders activist groups like the ACLU and others that use these international agreements as a kind of crowbar to pry open America's borders and to make it impossible, preferably make it impossible, for us to deport anybody. So this is something we need to fix. We've created this problem among ourselves. The illegal aliens, whether they're from Guatemala or Cuba or Mauritania or Uzbekistan, because they're now coming from all over the world, word has gotten out, they're just taking advantage of our ridiculous policies. We need to clean our own house first, and you're going to see a lot of this whole problem get a lot smaller.
Well, the problem is the administration that's in the White House right now. That first of all, it is actually welcoming and encouraging this rush into this country, and has no idea of how it's going to impact them, other than they'll probably get more voters. I mean, I really don't think they've thought this through, because what liberal wants to destroy the environment? And if you keep people pouring into this country, we're going to run out of stuff, out of water. I mean, forget about global warming. How about the fact that we're exhausting our resources as it is, and now we're going to add 1 million, 2 million? What's the top count? 5 million people? How do you accommodate them?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and you're right that the people, especially on the left, although there's some libertarians, a lot of libertarians who are also on the same side as the leftists on this, on immigration. You're right, they're not thinking about consequences for, resources, jobs, government funding, costs, all that stuff. But I don't think they care, and I mean that not in a sort of callous way, although maybe that too, but it's that those questions aren't relevant, because what matters from this perspective is that we have no right to keep anybody out. In other words, that anybody who is in difficult circumstances of any kind and decides to move here, these people see, in other words, among ourselves, the leftists and the libertarians in the United States, see them as having a right to move here, and we have no right. The American people has no right to stop. That's the basic problem. The political problem is that we have a disagreement about whether America is allowed to protect its sovereignty or not. And this is part of a bigger problem. I call it post-Americanism. That, much of our elite, again, not just on the left, but even some on the more libertarian or corporate-oriented right, aren't patriotic Americans anymore. I mean, I don't know how else. There's no nice way to put it. Doesn't mean they hate America. Doesn't mean they're Jane Fonda, who are traitors or anything like that. It means that America for them is kind of like, I don't know, like a suburb you might live in. And if you find a nicer house in a different town, you'd move there. You like the suburb you live in well enough, but, you don't have any emotional connection to it. You're not going to send your children to, fight and die for it. It's just kind of a place. If you get a better offer, you go to a different place. That's the way much of our elite sees America. And then that has immigration consequences. Oh,
big time. And I look at these states, like now you have Governor Abbott, who said, look, I'm going to have to do what I have to do to protect the people of Texas. And the Department of Justice is actually threatening them. So who's left? Who's going to be the final bulwark between us and total chaos at the border and in the country, in the interior? I don't know.
American voters, I'm afraid, is the only. I mean, this is if the administration gets chastised badly enough next year, which is now, almost a year and a half from now for the next elections, it's not going to change everything, because the Biden administration is still going to be in the White House, but they can, the worst excesses might be reined in if they lose big next year. And then ultimately, the only way you're going to get any movement forward is to have a different administration. And, we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, we've been here before. I mean, this is what.
Yeah, but it's never been this bad. I got to say, I'm yearning for the good old days of the Obama administration on immigration, because as bad as it was, the Obama administration was not nearly as bad as the Biden people. For all this talk about how he's a kindly old, moderate old man, on immigration, other areas probably too, but immigration is what I know. This is the most radical administration in American history.
Right. And the amazing part is we just came out of an administration that took this issue seriously, had gotten things substantially under control. It wasn't perfect, but it was the best I'd seen in my adult lifehood. And here we are. The pendulum swung so far over that I think you're right. There's going to be a massive exchange of seats in 2022. And if I were, Speaker Pelosi, I would, get my IRA ready because retirement's in her future. It's just, will it be enough? Like you said, without
well,
the
her
White
husband's
House.
rich enough; she doesn't have to worry about IRAs. But yes, we'll see if that's the case or not.
Yeah.
And the reason it's gotten this bad is because this administration, when they were campaigning, their entire immigration policy was whatever Trump did, do the opposite.
Right.
And that's why we're in the pickle we're in now.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I thank you for coming on. I'm going to be talking with Todd sometime next week because if it weren't for the Center for Immigration Studies, I wouldn't have the tools that I need to make this argument and to have the debates that I have. Because the mainstream media is not covering this. Every now and again, they might put somebody on the air like you, but for the most part, they're hoping that we'll ignore the crisis, and so far we have.
Thanks, appreciate it.
All right, thank you. And everybody ought to listen to Follow Parsing Immigration Policy. You can get it on everything: Apple, Amazon, Spotify. It's everywhere. Google podcasts, wherever you want. Listen to it. It's great stuff. I got to take a break. We'll be right back. And welcome back. This is the part of the show every week where I bring my son Derek on and we talk about the celebrity news that he covers on he doesn't, but the news team at TMZ covers, and then he vets it to make sure that they can't get sued. And then he does his routines in the television show. But if you watch that show, you've noticed that he has not been there this week, and that's because he is on a much-needed family vacation. And if you live in Los Angeles, you're going to need more than a vacation, is my guess, because the rules that are coming down the pike, if you think it's scary here, where our new Broward County Superintendent of Schools has decided that our kids are going to have to wear masks all year in school, even little kids. In L.A., not only do they have to wear masks all day, but they're going to be tested for COVID once a week, which is just absolutely crazy. I can't even begin to wrap up my mind around that. But it's it is what it is, and we'll find out. And a lot of celebrity news that he kind of steered me towards. And I have to admit that I don't know who half the people are that they talk about on these entertainment websites. I really don't. But I love to see, what kinds of stories are getting all the attention. And they mostly are death and destruction stories, which is very, very scary to me. A lot of people passed away. Now you got a lot of stars who are taking stands. Look at Sharon Stone. She took a stand demanding vaccinations on the set of a new project. And as a result, she's being threatened with losing that job. She isn't naming names yet, but says it's a show that's shooting in Atlanta, which she calls a really good job. She really wants to do it. However, she's insisting on the same precautions that Sean Penn recently did for one of his sets. The difference is they gave right in to Sean Penn, and Sharon Stone might get cut. She's running for an actors union position, by the way, a seat on the SAG-AFTRA's National Board of Directors. And according to Deadline, which is sort of a competitive website, she laid out the COVID testing nightmare in her campaign video. And in another campaign video, she reveals a health insurance nightmare that prompted her to run. She said, "I lost my vested insurance after 43 years in the business because of COVID. I was $13 short, and I don't really think that this is reasonable for any of us." I apologize, but I don't know. They're painting the exterior of my building, and I don't know if I just inhaled some fumes through the window. I have no idea, but that's what live radio entails sometimes. You know what I think it is? I'm just going to say this. I think the idea of me doing entertainment news with everything that's going on in this country just offended the Lord who gave me the talent to do what I regularly do on the air, so he just took it away. He said, "No, that's not what I had in mind, and therefore that's not what you'll be doing today." I don't know how many of you got to see. So we're not doing entertainment news. We'll wait till Derek gets back from his vacation. But I don't know how many of you saw the scene yesterday, or maybe it was the day before yesterday. I didn't see the video clip until yesterday of President Biden at a signing. And he is signing, I think it was some kind of American for Disabilities Act extension or something of that nature. It had to do with the Americans for Disabilities Act because there was a young lady seated next to him. She was wheelchair bound, and she obviously had some physical disabilities. And he's signing this thing, and at the end of every bill signing, the president uses a number of pens, and then he gives them away. So he gave a pen to Nancy Pelosi. He gave a pen to, some other ranking Democrat that was standing around there. And then he was about to give the last pen away, and the vice president, Kamala Harris, leans over and says, "Don't forget to give one to the disabled girl that was sitting next to him." And he got really, a little disturbed with her. And I've been watching this a lot lately. Like, she's around way more than I've ever seen a vice president be around. Now, I understand that Dr. Jill is in Tokyo meeting with world leaders because, obviously, whether you voted for her or not, you want her to lead the country, anything but her, but him. So I think, like, maybe Kamala Harris has become, like, his main handler these days. And there's no love lost between those two. I mean, you just go back to those debates where she accused him of being a racist and talked about being the poor little black girl on the bus and all of that stuff. So he never forgot that. She never forgot that he beat her, to a pulp. I mean, she was the anointed one at the beginning. Oh, yeah, it's going to be Kamala. Everybody loves Kamala. And then it turned out nobody even likes Kamala. And that becomes more clear to me every single time I watch them engage. So here she is at this signing ceremony, and she's basically bossing him around, and he snapped, man, big time. He especially because you see them together so much, he's tired of it. He obviously needs handlers, and it looks like she just might be one of them. But you keep seeing these videos where people are directing the president on what to do or where to go. He's like a little lost puppy in the big city, and it's usually Dr. Jill Biden or Kamala Harris that have to like lead him along or help him along. So you sign a piece of paper or two, then you pass out a few pens so they can be thrown away. But it seems like maybe it was more than he could handle. So he's passing out the pens. He gives them away to everyone except for the disabled woman who was sitting right next to him. And, and I was right. It was the signing on the anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. So that girl was there for a reason. And he gave pens to everybody else, right? So Kamala steps in and whispers to him, but you can hear everything on the microphone, that she still needs one. And he immediately snapped back, "I will, but I want to make sure I got all the..." And then he realized that was the last pen and that she hadn't received one. He was not a happy president. He really wasn't. And I don't understand what that relationship is. Here's a person who accused him of being a racist, and now she's bossing him around, Like, I thought when he was the vice president, it used to bother me that he was just one heartbeat away from the presidency. Like, I never wished any ill on Barack Obama because the thought of having Joe Biden have to step into the presidency was frightening, really, because he was doddering then. Now he's beyond doddering. So I still would feel better now with him in the White House than her. Can you imagine if she does take over? I mean, there's a substantial, case to be made that he will not be able to complete the 4 years, and he definitely doesn't look poised for another 4 years. So when, when she gets the power, if she gets the power, is she going to be yelling at everyone? You almost have to say, the reason you don't get to see presidents and vice presidents together a lot, Because I always wondered about that. Like, do they not like each other? No, it's because you don't want them both in the same place. God forbid there should be a catastrophe. You know, it could be a natural catastrophe, it could be a terrorist attack, whatever it is. You usually have them in separate places. When you do see them, it's a big deal. Like when they were going through the COVID press briefings and stuff, they would bring the president in. But basically, it was the Mike Pence show because he had put him in charge of that. And he did a fine job, by the way, although now they don't get along at all either. But I'm watching her. She doesn't just, show up once in a while. She's there just about every single time. So now, if there were to be an attack and they're both there, who? Nancy Pelosi? She's usually there with them, too. It's absolutely mind-boggling. I look at that Three Stooges up there yesterday, Kamala Harris, President Biden, and Nancy Pelosi, and I'm thinking to myself, this is it? In the greatest nation on earth, this is the best we could do? And then I get the fast view of this Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, wearing, I don't even know what to call that. I've seen some people who wear those like visor-like things, but this looked more like a complete shield. Like, I don't know, like he was going to go up on a building and weld. He'll have to get in line behind Joe Biden, who's going to drive an 18-wheeler. These people, they lie, they misrepresent, they have no courage, and that's what we have in control of this great, great nation. Which is why, as I said to Mark Krikorian earlier in the show, I think it's going to be a bloodbath in 2022. I spoke with a young man who's considering, running for a congressional seat. And I said to him, it probably is the best time to run because I think that people are so sick and tired of what they see coming out of the Democrat Party, out of the left, that they'll pretty much vote for anybody who says, I don't stand for that. Much like a lot of people voted for Joe Biden because they just hated Donald Trump. It wasn't like they liked Joe Biden. I could never get anybody to tell me, oh, I really support Joe Biden. I can't wait till Joe Biden's president. It was, I can't wait till Donald Trump is gone. That's all I ever heard. Anyway, I took some mixed heat when I went and said that I just was really tired of these superstar athletes that become crybabies, the LeBron James and the Steph Currys. But I really think I might have gone overboard with Miss Biles because now, it's really, we're starting to hear about all this basically emotional and mental illness that has been going on for a period of time, and it was just too much for her, and that's what people are accepting. So I thought it was interesting. One of the emails that I got yesterday was from a woman who was in the gymnastics field for 30 years. She was an athlete, a coach, a choreographer, and a level 10 judge. I don't know what that means, but I'm guessing like she really knows gymnastics, okay? She said, I am not in Simone's head, and while there is great pressure to perform, I suspect she was angry with her performance. She is the top U.S. all-arounder, vault being her best event. If she walked out early in the rotation, she very likely affected the team total, which was my argument to everybody. It's like it affected the entire team. They came in second place. They weren't expected to come in and get a silver. They were expected to get a gold. So she goes on to say, one can't predict how the outcome might have been if she stayed in, but no doubt, as you said, she left her teammates in a lurch. P.S. Because then I said they're all real skinny, and I think they probably have a little anorexia. She said, P.S. Gymnasts eat very well. They are skinny because they burn probably 3,000 calories a day. I go to see my chiropractor because I have a lot of wear and tear. Gymnasts are pound for pound the strongest athletes. You have to eat healthy. So it's always fascinating to me that there'll be somebody listening to the show, whether they agree with me or not, that has more expertise than I have, and they feel free to share it with me. So you should do the same thing. You can either go to the website or just email joyceradio@gmail.com. And you can send me your nasty stuff, too. I'm not quite sure that I will read it on the air, but I will certainly read it. I try to read all of it. And if I can't read it, I make sure that somebody else does read it in case there's something that's very, very important. And that's just the way, I was going to say I roll, but I think that's not even fashionable anymore. It's just the way I am. So I'll stick with the proper English. I did want to mention that I saw some crazy footage of Chris Cuomo yesterday. He's just an awful human being. He really is. You know, he was like arguing with Byron Donalds the other day, and then yesterday, was it yesterday? Might have been earlier in the week, but I didn't see the video until just yesterday. And basically, he is yelling and stomping his feet and screaming pretty much, you know, at his guest. And I'm trying to figure out, why would anyone go on his show? You know, it's obvious that if you have a point to make, he's not going to let you make it. And he's probably going to belittle you. He was yelling at a restaurateur who decided that he was going to put up a sign saying, you can only come in this restaurant if you're not vaccinated. Now, obviously, the restaurateur was just, you know, making a point. But Chris Cuomo, you don't know how stupid you sound. And I'm thinking to myself, kind of as stupid as you did with that giant Q-tip and your brother, the governor, who I feel is responsible. And then, of course, Chris Cuomo also, and everybody else, has to slam Peter Doocy because he keeps asking hard questions. Whoever thought Steve Doocy's son would end up being the best White House correspondent since, I don't know, what's the senior guy there? Bert, I don't watch Fox anymore, so I don't remember. Brit Hume. Since Brit Hume, this guy is the best that there's been. Anyway, I thank you for your time this time. Until next time, I will be back on Monday at noon, if it be his will, and he delays his coming. What lies behind us and what lies ahead of us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. So wherever you are, put your mask in the trash can and live your life. God bless you. And God bless the United States of America. Have a good weekend. Do something nice for somebody else.